What's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm gonna go over my opinion on why I think so many PA applicants are re-applicants. Here we go. So before I dive into, I guess not really my rant, but my opinion and my thoughts on this matter, I want you guys to know this is all my personal opinion. This isn't necessarily 100% accurate, as there are a number of reasons why pre-PA students are re-applicants, but this is something I want to shed light on for anyone that is going to be thinking about applying this upcoming cycle or in the near future. So let's get into it. So one of the biggest reasons why I think so many pre-PA students are re-applicants or have to apply to PA school 2 to 3 different cycles is because they don't apply to enough schools. Let me repeat that. The reason why so many pre-PA students are re-applicants is because they don't apply to enough schools. It's constantly told everywhere that the average number of schools that an applicant applies to is 8. And it's even written on the application itself. But even though the average number is 8, I know a lot of people who apply to less than that. And I really think that you're not putting yourself in the best position to receive an interview, which in turn turns into an acceptance if you apply to not that many schools. You guys have heard my story. You know I've applied to way more than average. Like you guys have seen in my previous video, my GPA was not the greatest. So that definitely worried me in terms of how many schools that I should apply to. And I think more pre-PA applicants need to apply more broadly and to more schools. Especially if your application has some weak points, I definitely think that you should apply to more than 8 programs. Don't limit yourself to only applying to programs in your state. I know a lot of people don't want to move too far from where they're at. And if you have a family or if you have kids and your husband has a job, then it's a little bit more understandable. But if you're, I guess, under 30, you're single, and you have the ability to move, I think that it's really important to give yourself more options when you do apply to PA school. If you're confident in your application, I highly recommend applying to more than 8 schools. And you hear those stories of students that applied to 1 school and got in, but those stories are really rare. Those kind of give me chills because yes, you got into a program, but what if you didn't and you could have gotten in if you applied to more programs? And PA school is becoming so competitive that you don't want to bank on only 3 or 4 programs to get an interview and then accepted. I totally understand that the cost of applying to PA school is expensive. I just went through it. But I really think that if you're confident in your application, you should definitely put more chips into the pile, put, a little bit more money and effort into the first cycle as opposed to only applying to a few programs and then you'll reapply. And that's not the mentality that you should have too. If you go into it thinking that, I hope I get an interview, but if I don't, I'll just reapply next cycle. No, you should go into it, I'm gonna be accepted this first cycle. Use that motivation, use that mentality to push you to write good personal statement, amazing secondary essays, and just having a killer CASPA application. You want to put yourself in the best situation to succeed, and applying to so little programs is not going to do that. So like I mentioned, I applied to a lot of schools, and again, this was due to my low GPA, and for me, I understood that PA school is becoming very competitive. My stats are below average. My experience is about average, so I can't just apply to 8 schools like an average applicant. I think the sweet spot of programs to apply to is 15 to 20. And before you guys go crazy about 15 to 20 schools, I want you to think about it like this. If you only apply to 8 schools your first cycle and you apply to 8 schools again your second cycle, that's more expensive than you applying to 1 cycle for 15 schools or 16 schools. So keep that in mind. And you also gain a whole year's worth of salary. This is banking that you do get in on your first try. Like I mentioned earlier, applying to grad school, PA school is very expensive, and you definitely should budget before you start applying. I know medical school applicants that apply to 40 to 50 programs, and no one bats an eye about that. But when you hear about a PA student that applied to more than 15 schools, everyone goes crazy. But I honestly think that PA school is becoming so competitive that applying to 15 to 20 programs is going to become the norm. If you look at CASPA in 5 years, I would say the average number of programs that an applicant applies to is going to be closer to 12 to 15. For me, when I was going through the process and thinking about schools to apply to, which I will do another video on how to choose what programs to apply to, I was definitely thinking long term. I'm all in this 1 cycle. I feel confident confident in myself. Although my GPA isn't the highest, I package myself as a well-rounded applicant, and if I get an interview, I'll have a good shot of being accepted. I really didn't want to apply twice, and that was my biggest thing. And something that I, later realized is that I chose not to give up an extra year's worth of salary by applying to a little bit more programs my first cycle. Obviously, the cost of 1 year's worth of salary and the cost of applying to a few more programs is obviously substantially different. And something I also want to know is that every program looks at your application differently. So be open-minded. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. If you've lived in Colorado your whole life, or you've lived in Oregon your whole life, or New York, don't be afraid to apply to some programs outside of your state. Something I want to mention is that don't let someone telling you that it's okay to be a re-applicant and using that as an excuse to not give it your all in the first try.
Hope this video was helpful. Don't forget to be like my blood type, be positive,